Hi, everyone. Diabetes Connections has expanded into in-person events. And this fall, we have 4 ways for the community to gather, learn, and just be with people who get it. Mom's Night Out, our event for moms of children with diabetes and women with type 1, will be in Minneapolis this September and Phoenix in October. All the info at diabetes-connections.com. We've added 2 new events for the entire community. We're calling this Club 1921. The first 2 Club 1921 education dinners are in Charlotte, North Carolina in September and November, and we'll have information on more cities for 2026. If you're interested in partnering with us on these or attending, reach out. I'd love to tell you more. Diabetes Connections is what it's all about. This week on Diabetes Connections, an important update on a diabetes drug you may have never heard about. Sotagliflozin is known to have big benefits for people with type 2, but getting it approved for type 1 has been frustrating to say the least. The FDA has twice declined to approve it for people with T1D, but experts, including my guest, are pushing and hoping that will soon change. I'm talking to Dr. Steve Edleman, an endocrinologist who lives with type 1 and heads up the group Take Control of Your Diabetes, TCOYD. We'll talk about the risks that come with sotagliflozin, how continuous ketone monitoring could change the game, and what you can do to push for change. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. You know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. And I'm guessing that my guest this week is familiar to many of you, and no wonder Dr. Steve Edleman's TCOYD is turning 30. Take Control of Your Diabetes is such a fabulous resource for people living with any type of diabetes, as well as for loved ones and caregivers. I send people to it all the time. They have a fantastic library. They do all these great videos that are fun and educational. And if you get the chance to go to one of their conferences, I highly recommend it. But as they are turning 30, I just got an email from them about this. They are having a celebration in October. I'll link it up in the show notes for you. They're calling it a fundraiser. They like to do things a little bit differently. So definitely check that out. They do it right. I last went to a TCOYD conference, I think in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2019. But I also want to say that there was an event in Charlotte earlier that year when I saw Dr. Edleman talking about SGLT inhibitors and why he thought they should be approved for people with type 1. Later that year, it was denied, and the FDA denied it again late last year, late in 2024. So here we are talking about it again. If you're not familiar with Dr. Edleman, I should probably introduce him a little bit better. As I said, he is the founder and director of TCOYD. He is a professor of medicine in the Division of Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Metabolism at the University of California, San Diego, and he is the director of the Diabetes Care Clinic at the VA Medical Center. He lives with type 1. He's been named to so many lists, top 1% of U.S. endocrinologists, and so much more. He's going to go into detail explaining a lot more here. But you should know this is an oral medication. It's a pill that a lot of people with type 2 have taken safely for years. The issue here is the possibility of DKA with normal blood sugar. But new technology is coming that could be a real help here. Our conversation right after this. When I think about our family's use of CGM and Dexcom, it's hard to remember how we did things before. Truly, how did we manage when Benny needed something like 10 finger sticks a day when he was a toddler? We thought it was amazing to switch to Dexcom when it needed to be calibrated 2 times a day. Now, Dexcom G6 eliminates finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. Benny's fingertips looked just awful when he was in elementary school. When they got wet, you could really see how pitted and scarred up they were from all those finger sticks. Now they're healthy and smooth, which I never thought would happen back then. He doesn't even remember. But to me, it's everything. Learn more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Steve, welcome back to Diabetes Connections. Always great to talk to you. We always end up talking about lots of stuff and for way too long, but thanks for jumping on. I appreciate you being here.
Stacey, thank you for having me back. You got so much energy. Now you're giving me energy. And I think we can talk pretty much about anything. And for the listeners, we just spoke for 30 minutes before the show started.
Part of that conversation was cluing me into more of what we're talking about today. And now I'm nervous that I'm not going to pronounce it right, but sotagliflozin
Perfect.
is a big deal that a lot of people don't know about. Steve, you're very, very good at laying out the basics. Would you mind starting at the beginning? What is this medication? What does it do? Who is it for?
Okay, let me take one step back because sotagliflozin is the third or fourth, what we call SGLT. Let's just talk about the two main ones and then we'll switch over to sotagliflozin.
Okay.
We have Farxiga and we have Jardiance. They were originally approved for people with type 2 diabetes for the one indication of improving glycemic control. Because the FDA required all new drugs for type 2 diabetes to do a cardiovascular outcome trial, they wanted to make sure that it was safe for the heart. And that's a long story going back to the old troglitazone days. But to make a long story short, we didn't know much about these drugs and the safety of the heart. The results showed tremendous benefits, particularly congestive heart failure, which is the number one reason why people pass away with type 2 diabetes from heart disease. The heart just can't pump enough blood around the body and fluid builds up. It's a bad gig and it works very quickly. So it got approved for the prevention of congestive heart failure, hospitalization for heart failure, death from heart failure. Okay. Then shortly after that, they noticed that people with diabetes in these trials who had kidney dysfunction, chronic kidney disease, that their kidney disease got better. So then both Jardiance and Farxiga did specific studies in people with type 2 diabetes. Those that had stage 3, which is chronic kidney disease, there's 1 through 6. 3 is in the middle. It's something to pay serious attention to. They showed that these drugs reduce the progression of chronic kidney disease. Okay, that's the background. So then Lexicon, the makers of sotagliflozin, they got their drug approved for people with type 2 diabetes with the same indication, diabetes, reducing congestive heart failure. And that drug is called IMPEFA. I believe it's EMPEFA. So remember that a lot of drugs are exactly the same, but they have different names based on their indication. So I'll just give you the one example, like Ozempic is for type 2 diabetes, but if you take it for weight loss, it's called Wegovy, Mounjaro, and then there's Zepbound. Same exact drug, right? Different indication. It's so darn confusing. So sotagliflozin is a SGLT inhibitor. All the other ones are SGLT2 inhibitors, and sotagliflozin inhibits two different areas, SGLT1 and 2 inhibitors. But the bottom line is it's an SGLT inhibitor. And the class of drugs, Stacy, are very similar. They're homogeneous in many ways. We think that the sotagliflozin is a little different because it affects other areas, and there's benefits to that. But the bottom line is every expert in the world feels confident that if you gave that drug to people with type 1 diabetes, they would not only, they've given it to type 1s, it lowers the glucose, it improves time in range, and all the experts feel that you would get the same benefits that we see in type 2.
Before you go any further, quick question about form factor. It's a pill? It's an injectable?
These are all pills once a day.
Got it. Okay. Big difference for a lot of people who don't want to take injectables.
Yeah, and I'll come back to that a little bit, but it's important to know when we talk about the side effects. But the most important thing, you interrupted me, but...
Get used to it. I know you have your own podcast.
Jeremy now interrupts me. Here's a big issue that all these benefits we see in type 2, heart and kidney, we think that those benefits are there in people with type 1 diabetes. Why? Because the pathophysiology, sorry to get big words on there, but I'm a doctor, the cause of kidney and heart disease are very similar in type 1 and type 2, almost indistinguishable. But the studies have not been done yet. That's an important issue. They haven't taken a large group of type 1s, given them sotagliflozin, and looked at kidney and heart disease. They're ongoing now.
Okay.
That comes to the FDA story later on. Why didn't the FDA approve sotagliflozin for type 1s? Lexicon, the makers of sotagliflozin, have been to the FDA twice. Both times they got turned down for primarily one reason. It can cause a slightly higher rate of diabetic ketoacidosis. And the makers of Jardiance and Farxiga, Boehringer Ingelheim and AstraZeneca, they also went to the FDA. They got turned down as well. Now, some of these are approved in other countries, believe it or not. But the big concern is diabetic ketoacidosis. And we know diabetic ketoacidosis can occur. It occurs in most type 1s when we're first diagnosed. If your pump line comes out and you don't realize it, you don't get enough insulin, you don't have any insulin, you can develop ketones, and it could really cause you to be sick, go to the intensive care unit, and you can pass away from DKA. And it turns down that with proper education, you can do a lot of risk mitigation out in the free living state and prevent yourself from ever getting sick. But let me say one last thing. I know it's a lot of stuff, and you've been such a good listener. There's a thing called euglycemic DKA. What does that mean? Euglycemic means your blood sugars aren't that high. Most of the folks that go into DKA, your pump line pulls out, you first get diagnosed, you're super sick, your blood sugars are through the roof. But because of the way these SGLT inhibitors work, they shove glucose out in the urine, your blood sugar may not be that high. And so it may not dawn on someone that they're going into DKA. So that is the one thing why the FDA did not approve sotagliflozin. And I could say that right now, after several meetings with the FDA, they have agreed, and really appreciative of them agreeing to look at ongoing safety results from these studies that I just mentioned that are ongoing to make a decision on if they should approve sotagliflozin. Now, there's also a thing called Phase 4 pharmacovigilance. What does that mean? Phase 4 means the drug's available, people are being prescribed it, and any adverse events on any drug are reported to the FDA. And so even though most people are on sotagliflozin or type 2s for the INPEFA label, there are type 1s that take it, and there are type 1s that take the other SGLT inhibitors like Jardiance and Farxiga, and they collect that data and they look for safety issues. And so far, at least at the time of the meeting that I was present with my friends from Lexicon, there were no adverse events. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say, and let you ask more questions, there's a study going on in Europe called Steno-1. There was a Steno-2 study years ago. Now they're doing it in type 1s. And it's an open label study, meaning that the investigators know who's getting sotagliflozin versus like you don't know if they're getting placebo or the drug. That's called a double-blind study. Not a really good name for people with diabetes. And they said that they would be glad to look at that safety data of the type 1s in the Steno-1 study and looking at the rate of ketoacidosis. At the time of the meeting several months ago, there were no episodes so far. It was just the beginning of the study. So to make a long story short, it's all about their fear of ketoacidosis, and they're willing to accept data out in the field. And I'm going to probably get an update on that when I speak to the folks from Lexicon soon. Now, the other thing that you should ask me about, go ahead. What about these continuous ketone monitors, Steve?
You are. I have a list. I just want to say, as the listener is listening, I have a list of questions. I should take a screenshot because you are going down the list. But before you go onto the continuous ketone monitoring, which is not out in the world yet, but it's right here circled. Before you head on to that, though, you mentioned this is approved elsewhere in the world. How long has it been approved? I know you mentioned the studies they're looking at right now, but has it been approved long enough for real-world data to suggest that this is as safe as the beginnings of these studies seem to indicate it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a little complicated because they had it available in certain countries in Europe, and then they changed their mind.
Right, okay.
And I think it's because the sales were so little, not because of a safety issue. And I do believe it's available in Japan, but I do not know the answer to that question. But typically, the FDA doesn't accept too much data from overseas, but I think the Steno-1 study is a bona fide study.
Yeah, it just seems like if this is available elsewhere in the world and people aren't reporting many, many cases of DKA, I get the FDA they like to see the American USA research and stuff.
But Stacey, we had this conference at Paradise Point for type 1 diabetics over the weekend, and we had a specific lecture by Eden Miller. She has type 1. She's a great speaker. She talked about SGLT inhibitors and GLP-1s in type 1s. And not everybody feels the same way. I have a friend in Canada. It's not available there. And he reads the reports and he thinks it's too dangerous. And I was texting him this morning. I said, Ian, a participant told me that you're down on SGLT inhibitors. And we had a discussion. And the bottom line is if you have any degree of kidney dysfunction or congestive heart failure, it is the best drug to not only halt and slow the progression, but improve kidney function. And so I don't hesitate at all to prescribe them. If I have someone that's totally healthy, no heart or kidney disease, glucose under good control, I may not be prescribing it. But we do know it also helps with time and range and A1C. But I think the biggest benefit is heart and kidneys. One of the most common things that type 1s and type 2s get. Stacy, no one can stop me from prescribing these in patients who I know is going to benefit them.
All right, let's talk about what I am calling CGKM, which probably won't be the name of it, continuous glucose ketone monitors. These are not yet out in the... Well, what are they going to call them, right? These are not...
Well, you're calling them what Abbott calls them. That's fine.
Is that what Abbott calls it? CGKM?
Doesn't matter.
They call it dual glucose ketone.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I don't care what any calls it.
DCKM. All right. To be clear, they're not out in the world yet. To be clear, they're not here yet. They're coming. And it sounds like this would be the perfect test case for something like this, right? I mean, this would make this issue not necessarily go away, but be mitigated. Right back to our conversation. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. Did you know all the sounds used to make that song come from a site change with the Omnipod 5 automated insulin delivery system? Pretty cool, huh? With Omnipod 5, pump site changes are simple. The pod lasts up to 3 days, 72 hours, and to change it, you just fill up the pod with insulin, place it on your body, tap a few buttons in the Omnipod 5 app, and you're ready to go. There's no tubing to prime like with traditional insulin pumps, and it's virtually pain-free. So you never have to see or handle the insertion needle. Want to try Omnipod 5 for yourself? Request a free Omnipod 5 starter kit today by visiting omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Terms and conditions apply. Eligibility may vary.
Did you hear the pod drop?
Totally. Well, here's the thing. We do have ketone meters now that measure what we call beta hydroxybutyrate. A lot of people test their urine for ketones. It's not accurate. You can buy a meter and you can buy strips, but no one has one with them. No one has the strips. And this is going to be one sensor, like the Libre 3, that measures both. And I think it's a tremendous advance. And don't forget, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, if the insulin pump line comes out, you'll be the first to know. Turns out ketones, these dangerous ketones, go up before the glucose. So you can do things, and we'll talk about that. And I think when you're sick, you need more insulin. If you're on an SGLT2, it's a tremendous advance. Yeah. And I think that it's going to reduce the incidence of DKA requiring ER visits and hospitalizations big time, with or without the SGLT inhibitors on the market, because people go into DKA all the time. And I'll say the one word about risk mitigation. It's very simple. Insulin, ton of insulin. When you're in DK, you're resistant to insulin. Don't futz around with small doses. Fluids like Gatorade Zero, but also the third thing that people always go, really? Carbohydrates, but insulin with those carbohydrates. It turns out that the brain, when there's not enough insulin around, which is the cause of ketoacidosis, the brain says, I need energy. So let's break down fat into ketone bodies, and I'll use those for energy. So they're surviving at the expense of causing way too much ketones in your blood. And that's ketoacidosis. And so the minute you take carbohydrates, it reduces the brain's drive for breaking down ketones. You're giving carbohydrates and insulin. So it's one of the things you can reverse the signs and symptoms, doctor talk, of ketoacidosis just by taking carbohydrates along with insulin and fluids. People always forget the carbohydrates.
Yeah. But, my bias was showing there, jumping right to the continuous ketone monitoring and skipping over the meters that we have available right now. Because like you said, we have the meters somewhere in a drawer. The strips are expensive, so we don't always get them. When my kid gets sick, I make him pee on the stick and we say, let's see. So
No, you're right.
I'm not alone, right?
You're typical.
Yeah.
In fact, you're atypical that most people don't even have one at home.
Well, I got it. You know when I got it, Steve? When he went to college. I said, you have got to have this with you because I'm not going to be there to make you pee on a stick.
Did he ever use it?
I'm sure it's still sealed in the box.
Yeah.
I hate to say
Yeah.
that.
No, they're good, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think Abbott's a really smart company. They're going to make it so your ketone levels aren't in your face all the time. You go
Yeah.
crazy, and it'll give you, like, as I hear through the grapevine, it'll give you a red, green, or yellow. And when you get above the critical level or approach 1.6, you don't have to remember the numbers. It might come on the screen and say, "Hey, your ketones are getting on the higher side." And I'm hoping they're going to push a button that says, "What do I do now?" Fluids, insulin, ketones. Make sure you have your numbers of your support people, things like that.
Yeah.
So you can totally reverse the early stages of ketoacidosis. And that, once again, that's the biggest concern by the FDA. And I hate to say negative things about the FDA, and I won't, but some of the folks on the panel, not the FDA people, but the people they come in, the AdCom people, and they're cardiologists, epidemiologists, endocrinologists. They have a patient person on there that has type 1. And a lot of those folks are ignorant about ketoacidosis. They learned in medical school that, oh, you can die from it. So no way would we give this to a type 1. So, Stacey, the first meeting was in 2019. And then they turned it down then, and then they turned it out again 2024. Same reason.
This isn't the first conversation about medications that work in type 2 that appear to also work well in type 1 but are only approved for type 2. I don't want to get too far afield, but I do know that at your conference that you just had and at ADA, a big topic of conversation was GLP-1s and approval for type 1. Do you feel like that's moving better? That's moving forward in a more, I don't want to say productive way, but is there a better chance of that happening? Or I know we're hopeful for both.
Absolutely, yes. It's a great question, Stacey, and it's a topic because I think there's a lot more going on in the GLP-1 space than there is in the SGLT inhibitor space, a ton more. And they presented the first double-blind, patients had good vision, but they were in the double-blind study of Ozempic 1 milligrams or placebo. And they were all type 1s that had a BMI over 30. So they're all heavy type 1s. All of them were on hybrid closed-loop automatic insulin delivery. And guess what? Their A1C dropped, their weight dropped, their insulin requirements dropped, and they had no adverse effects of ketoacidosis or severe abdominal discomfort. So it was the first study. It was only 70 people. Oh, their time in range went up. Everything went in the right direction. And they lost 8% of their body weight, and that's a good amount of weight. FDA considers anything over 5% is good. And their A1C dropped. Everything went in the right direction. So, and I can tell you that Lilly, Genentech, and other companies are right now doing studies of GLP-1s and just like Mounjaro, the dual GLP-1 GIP in type 1s. So there's going to be a lot of data. I predict approval in the not too distant future. And I do hope the FDA takes into account some of this other data on sotagliflozin. And as I mentioned, there's 2 other studies going on now. And there's a way to do it, but you go to the external data safety monitoring board that watches the safety of these studies without talking about the results. That would make the study results invalid if you broke the seal. But there's a way to do it. And so we're going to have more data on that group as well, too. And I do predict someday sotagliflozin will be approved for people with type 1. It'll be a great day for type 1s because a lot of doctors will not prescribe it for kidney or heart problems because it's not approved.
Right. And it's not, when we think of approval, obviously, as you said, you can write the prescription. A lot of doctors will not if it's not approved, but insurance companies won't cover it if it's not approved.
Yep. And I can say this too, Stacey, that I have prescribed sotagliflozin and other SGLT inhibitors for type 1s. And the insurance companies are much more likely to approve that class of drugs than they are the GLP-1s because they're cheaper.
Yeah.
And I think they inherently know for the price, the benefits go far beyond the risks. And I can't even remember one that got turned down recently.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's good news. But the problem is a lot of doctors aren't even prescribing it. And they're scared because of the DKA. They don't understand DK. DK to me is not an issue that you can easily deal with. You just have to have education and knowledge.
So this might be a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway. I know that I know the FDA has to look at these separately, but at the same time, is there anything more dangerous than insulin? Right? And they sent me home with my 2-year-old and said, with wonderful education, but really, good luck, non-medical person. Here's some really powerful medication. Don't give too much. Don't give too little. Here you go. I know it's not something that you can articulate to the FDA, but you know that this patient population, this community gets very frustrated because we're going to be smart with insulin. Why can't we be smart with a medication like this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Even I've heard people say, yeah, I forgot Benny got diabetes at the age of 2.
23 months.
God bless you for, you probably lost years of your life taking care of him with all the stress. How does a 2-year-old tell you they're getting really low and stuff like that? But no, you're right. Even aspirin would never get approved if they applied to the FDA. You ever heard that before?
No.
There are a lot of side effects to aspirin.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, potential side effects.
Sure.
Here's the thing. The FDA, I think that they are going in the direction, and nothing political, but with the new administration, the newer leadership of the FDA is more, I've heard this. They're more for letting a patient make their own decision on the risk-benefit ratio and being a little bit more lenient than years past. Like I said, nothing political at all. It just depends on the FDA, the leadership, and I do think that the patient needs to have a voice if something is important for them. Let them understand what the risks are and let them make the decision on the risk-benefit ratio.
You've got a petition, a TCOYD. This is a terrible question, Steve. Are they effective? You wouldn't do it if you didn't think it would work.
I hope that they're effective. It's a great question, Stacey, because if you were at the AdCom meeting for sotagliflozin, they have a thing called the open public testimony. And that's anybody, you email administrator, and she's very nice, and depending on how many people sign up, and there's only 1 hour for it, you get 1 to 3 minutes. And I've never been at an AdCom where every single person that went up there to comment was positive about approving sotagliflozin, that it's needed. We don't have any other drugs for type 1. It shows lots of benefit. And usually there's 1 or 2 sourpusses, even on obvious approvals. But there wasn't one. And I would think that the FDA takes that into account. But you know what? They have to protect the public. And based on their knowledge and experience, they were worried about the DKA.
Got it.
In answer to your question, I hope it does. And maybe that allowed them to be a little more lenient and look at more data even after it was turned down. So it may have had some beneficial effect.
I appreciate that honesty. My audience, super smart, really well engaged. If you're listening to a diabetes podcast, you are looking for information and you probably have a decent relationship with your doctor. What's your advice for adults with type 1 who are listening, who are thinking, do I need this drug? Is this something I can ask for now? Should they wait for approval? Should they start talking about it with their doctor?
Yeah, not everyone has a good relationship with their doctor. Well, I would say, get educated on the benefits. I'll make this really short. If you have chronic kidney disease, if your GFR that's on your chem panel has been dropping, and your doctor said you have CKD stage 3 or 4 or 5 even, and the other thing, the urine albumin to creatinine ratio, it's a urine test. Everyone should be getting one. If that's actually going up, that represents fibrosis in your kidneys, then you have to have a serious conversation about getting on a SGLT inhibitor. Have to. And the other condition, congestive heart failure. If you have congestive heart failure, you're taking a diuretic, to keep the fluid down. If your cardiologist is worried about, if you have congestive heart failure, you know what CHF is, it stands for that, then that's another area where you should really have a serious conversation. And if you feel you're a good candidate, then you should get it. And you should accept the risk of DKA and then know what to do, know the signs and symptoms. So if you have none of those issues, then you may want to hold off until it's officially approved or the continuous ketone monitor. But there's no question, and that's a lot of people out there, Stacey.
Yeah.
And it kills me to have people out there with chronic kidney disease and not on these drugs. I've seen those indices, the GFR get better. I've seen the microalbumin to creatinine ratio get better quickly on these drugs. And you could delay the need for transplantation or dialysis and maybe prevent it altogether, depending on how early you institute these drugs. And you got to get those tests because there are no symptoms of kidney disease in the early stages. And just go to our website and type that in. We have so much good stuff on that.
Wonderful. And I'll link that up as well.
It's a class of medications that is super important for people with diabetes, type 1 and type 2. There's no reason why type 1s cannot benefit in terms of heart and kidney and diabetes. And I'm hoping the FDA is, dedicated to getting this drug approved and they feel comfortable with approving it. And that's important. And everyone with diabetes out there listening, type 1 or type 2, needs to make sure that they look at their GFR, look at it over time, and the urine albumin to creatinine ratio. And it comes in different forms, microalbumin to creatinine ratio. Super important. And to see what's going on over time. And if you're seeing abnormalities, you're not on an SGLT inhibitor, you need to have a serious talk with your kidney doctor, your regular doctor, your endo, or your cardiologist. They're all very knowledgeable now at this point in time.
Steve, before I let you go, TCOYD is such an incredible resource. I send people all the time, mostly, I'll be honest with you, mostly newly diagnosed people with type 2, because they have no idea half the time where to go. Your resources are not only, I'm not telling you anything new, they're not only so wonderfully informative and educational, they're fun and they're not scolding, right? You're not trying to blame and shame and give everybody guilt. You've been doing this a long time. Are you still having fun over there?
Edutainment. Well, and I'm actually in our studio right now. We got the podcast station, we got a green screen, we got a stage back here. You know what? It's the one silver lining of COVID for me and the organization, because we did face-to-face conferences for 25 years around the country. And now we had to pivot once COVID started. And now we can memorialize and produce really good information that goes out to people in over 200 countries. And we are a unique not-for-profit in the fact that we serve and educate both type 1 and type 2. Most not-for-profits are solely on type 1, not all. But that's because type 1, there's a sense of urgency, and type 2, there is not a sense of urgency. And that it's not their fault at all, but they need education as well. And there's a lot of important things we need to relate to them. So we do lots of programs on like fatty liver and cardiorenal syndrome, trying to take important information that only doctors learn about and put it in a format that's fun. In fact, I'm looking over here at our wardrobe area. We had MASH outfits because we talked about MASH, which is metabolic associated steatohepatitis, fatty liver, super common in people with type 2. So anyway, thank you for those kudos. Appreciate it.
Well deserved. And as you said, people with type 2 deserve all the education, just like everybody else. But you're one of the few places I think that is consistently doing it in a really great way. So Steve, thank you so much. And thanks so much for coming on. It's always great to talk to you. We could talk for hours probably. I hope.
Stacey, anytime. Anytime.
All right. Good
we
stuff.
Don't need to do a podcast. I wish we lived in the same city.
We wouldn't get anything done. But
we
keep us
probably
posted.
would get a lot done.
Keep us posted on this approval. And, as it moves forward, we'll follow up. And hopefully next time we'll be talking about ways to get the prescription when it's approved. I will link up more information, including the petition. If you want to sign that, I will link that up in the show notes. Go to diabetes-connections.com. Click on this episode's homepage. Every episode has its own homepage. I will also link up more information about TCOYD's 30th anniversary celebration and how you can take part in that. And of course, we'll follow up if the FDA makes any moves here, approving or not. We will let you know. Definitely keep an eye on our In the News episodes that happen every other Friday for updates on that. It's about to get really busy around here. I feel like I'm just looking ahead to Labor Day. And as soon as we hit that and fall starts, it's going to be like pedal down for the rest of the year. But I don't know, it wasn't that calm a summer either. Maybe we're just busy all the time, but I like it. I love getting all this stuff done. I love doing the in-person events. And of course, doing the podcast for 10 years. I'm not about to give that up. Thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.